few months ago, I decided to take a break from my job as a graphic designer. I'm 34 and thought a trip to the Appalachian Mountains would be perfect. I wanted to unwind and find some peace in nature. I found a nice spot to set up my tent. It felt calm at first, with tall trees surrounding me. As night fell, I made a fire and sat down, thinking everything was going well. But around 10 p.m. I heard laughter. It seemed distant, like it came from deep in the woods. I figured it was other campers, so I shrugged it off and tried to relax. The next morning I hiked early. The silence was strange. I came across a huge oak tree with odd symbols carved into its trunk. They looked old and faded. I stared at them for a while but didn't think too much about it. Just local stuff, I told myself. The feeling of being watched began creeping in, but I shook it off as nothing. That night, I lay in my sleeping bag feeling uneasy. I heard whispers drifting through the trees. My heart raced. I thought I was just being paranoid. I tried to sleep, but I felt cold, like someone was outside my tent. I listened closely, but the whispers faded away. The third day was even stranger. The symbols were everywhere now. They marked trees, stones, and even a few trails I had hiked. It felt wrong, like I stumbled into something I shouldn't have. I pressed on, but every shadow seemed to move, and I felt like I was not alone. When night fell again, I decided to turn my flashlight on while by the fire. I wanted to see if I could catch whatever was out there. As I glanced around, I felt a chill race down my spine. I thought I saw something dart between the trees, but when I looked, nothing was there but darkness. That was when I experienced the scariest moment so far. I was getting ready for bed, packing away my flashlight, when I saw a figure near my camp. It was just a flash, too quick to make out. "Hello?" I called out softly. No answer came. My heart was pounding. Was it an animal? I wasn't sure. The nights felt longer after that. Each time I heard a noise or saw a shadow, it got harder to breathe. By the fourth night, I was on edge. I could hear my heart thumping in my ears. Late that night, I heard it again, someone whispering my name. "Ethan." I froze. My mind raced with fear. I turned my flashlight toward the noise, my hands shaking, but there was nobody there. Just the dark trees and silence. I hardly slept after that, jumping at every rustle in the wind. The next morning, I packed my things. I felt like I needed to flee. The trip was supposed to cleanse me, not fill me with dread. As I hiked back down the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, like something had followed me home. I still can't explain what happened, and it haunts me to this day. The drive back home was long and tiresome, my thoughts swirling like the trees I had just left behind. The road seemed to stretch endlessly, while the shadows on the side of the highway felt heavier, denser. Every flash of light from passing cars made me jump. I was still on high alert, and my heart raced at the thought of lingering in the dark. When I finally reached my apartment, I thought the worst was over. I set down my gear and took a deep breath. The familiarity of my home felt surreal. I tried to push the memories aside, but they clawed at me. I needed to talk to someone about it. I called my friend Max, thinking he could provide some comfort. "I'm glad you're back," he said, though his voice sounded distant and muffled through the phone. "Did you enjoy it out there?" "Enjoy? Not really." I hesitated. It was kind of creepy, to be honest. I felt like I was being watched the whole time. "What do you mean?" he pressed, curious now. After recounting the whispers and the feeling of being followed, I shared the symbols I'd seen carved into the trees. There was silence on the line, and I could hear him breathing. "That sounds really odd, Ethan. You sure it wasn't just your imagination?" I thought so at first, but it got worse. I could hear my name whispered at night. I swear I saw something move. I don't think I imagined all of it. "Could be wildlife. Or maybe there's just a bunch of local legends," Max suggested casually, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Maybe, but there were symbols everywhere." I remembered staring at that oak tree. They looked ancient or something. I don't know. Look, just take it easy. You're home now, just relax. I tried to take his advice. I put on a movie and sank into the couch, but sleep wouldn't come. I peered out the window, half expecting to see eyes staring back at me from the dark. I felt ridiculous, but couldn't shake the feelings that had followed me back. The next day at work was a blur. My thoughts drifted to the trails, the strange feeling I couldn't shake, and how I needed to find out more about those symbols. During my lunch break, I Googled them. That's when I found a local forum discussing the very signs I had seen. They were tied to an old folklore about spirits that guarded the forest, protecting hidden sites. I read about people combing through the woods, trying to understand their meanings. Some claimed the spirits were benevolent, while others warned of their wrath against trespassers. As I read, I felt a chill creep up my spine. "Ethan!" a voice called, breaking my concentration. It was my boss. I quickly shut my laptop, trying to act normal, but later, as I walked back to my car, I sensed someone behind me. I turned, but there was no one there, just the wind rustling through the trees lining the parking lot. That night, I lay in bed wide awake. A knock sounded at my door, and I jolted upright. I held my breath, frozen. Then came the whisper again. "Ethan." I knew I wasn't imagining it this time. Something was calling me. I had to find answers. I woke up groggy the next morning, my heart still racing from last night's events. I needed to keep busy, to push away the gnawing sense of dread that had settled in my gut. As I brewed coffee, I glanced at my phone. There was a message from Max. "You sure you're okay? Want to hang out later?" I typed a quick reply. "Yeah, I'll be fine, just need to sort things out," and decided I would. Maybe a change of scenery would help. After work, the sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky orange. I parked outside a small cafe downtown and stepped inside. The aroma of coffee felt comforting, but the unease lingered. I chose a corner table, hoping to distract myself with a book, but the words swam before my eyes. I kept thinking about that legend, the spirits of the forest. I wanted to learn more, to understand if I was truly being followed or if my mind was playing tricks on me. Then I remembered something I had seen while scrolling through the forum. An old man named Harold who had dedicated his life to studying the folklore. Maybe he could help. I quickly pulled up the forum again and found a thread with his contact information. With a quick breath, I called the number. After a few rings, a raspy voice answered. "Hello? Hi, is this Harold? I found your number on a forum about the forest," I said, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, what do you want?" He sounded grumpy. "I wanted to ask about the symbols carved into the trees. I saw them while hiking." There was a pause. "Those markings aren't just pretty designs. You need to be careful with that. They're warnings." "Warnings?" I asked, confusion washing over me. "Yeah, they mark sacred ground. Disturb the spirits and you might find yourself in trouble." My stomach dropped. What kind of trouble? "Well," he hesitated, almost as if weighing his words. "You might be drawn to them more than you realize. You might start hearing things, seeing things. Like whispers." I nearly choked on my words. Exactly. I ended the call feeling lighter but also more anxious. What had I gotten myself into? The cafe noise faded away as my thoughts spun. I needed to get back to those trees. I had to understand what was going on. As I left the cafe, a heavy fog rolled in, blanketing the streets. It wasn't normal for this time of year. A shiver ran down my spine as shadows danced in the thick mist. I felt a tug at my consciousness, like something was urging me to turn back toward the mountain. I got in my car, my hands trembling on the wheel, but as I drove, a figure darted across the road. I slammed on the brakes. Heart pounding, I stared into the fog. I couldn't see anything, but the air felt charged, electric. Then, unexpectedly, there came a sharp knock against my window. I whipped around to see a face peering in. Panic clawed at me. The figure wore a hood, casting a shadow over their features. "Ethan," they whispered, and I felt my blood run cold. I barely had time to react when the figure vanished into the fog, leaving me breathless and bewildered. I needed to go back. I had to confront whatever was lurking in the woods. The drive back to the mountain was a blur. My mind raced with questions, too many to sort. Who was that? Why did they call my name? I could barely concentrate, the fog thickening around me like a shroud. It was as if the forest itself was beckoning me back. I parked at the trailhead, heart hammering. The air was damp and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the cafe. As I stepped out of the car, the overwhelming sense of unease crept back in. I wrapped my arms around myself and took a deep breath. I had to do this. The forest loomed ahead, shadows writhing beneath the trees. Each crunch of leaves underfoot felt like a drumbeat, amplifying my anxiety. I followed the familiar path, anxiety bubbling in my throat. I needed to find those trees, those symbols that held the key to whatever was happening to me. After what felt like an eternity of walking, I stumbled upon the clearing. The trees stood tall, their bark marked with strange symbols. I stepped closer, the warnings Harold spoke of echoing in my mind. Still, something compelled me to reach out and trace them with my fingertips. A strange energy surged through me, a sensation I couldn't explain, but felt deeply. Then I heard it, a soft whispering, almost melodic, swirling through the trees. It was haunting yet inviting, luring me deeper into the woods. My heart raced, a mix of fear and intrigue. I couldn't turn back now. Following the sound, I wandered further, almost entranced. As I moved deeper, the whispers grew louder, the forest coming alive around me. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, a flash of white across my path. I spun around, but the woods were silent again. "Ethan!" The voice came again, clearer this time, more insistent. It sent chills down my spine. I pressed forward, pushing through a tangle of branches. Then, I found her. A girl stood there, almost ethereal, shimmering in the fading light. Her long hair floated as if caught in an unseen breeze. "You came," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Who are you?" I asked, stumbling over my words. "What do you want from me?" She stepped closer, her eyes dark yet piercing. "You're drawn to the forest. You must listen. The spirits are angry. You must leave before it's too late." My breath caught. Angry. Why? "The markings. They protect the sacred ground. You've disturbed them, called their attention. You must go, Ethan." Oh, fear gripped me at her words. I glanced back at the path I had come from. Maybe she was right. I needed to leave. But something inside me hesitated. I felt a connection to this place I couldn't explain. Just then, a low growl echoed through the trees. I turned, my heart racing. The fog thickened, and shapes began to move among the trees. Shadows morphed into figures, closing in around us. "Run!" the girl shouted, her ethereal form flickering like a candle in the breeze. And that's when everything went dark. I awoke on the forest floor, disoriented. The dim light filtering through the trees felt surreal. The whispering ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of my surroundings. My heart raced as I pushed myself up. The girl was gone, and I was alone. Anxiety flooded my mind. Where had she gone? I scanned the shadowy landscape, remembering the growls that had echoed behind us. I had run, but the darkness had swallowed me whole. The chill in the air bit at my skin. I stood up gingerly, brushing away the damp leaves stuck to my clothes. As I gathered my bearings, I caught sight of something on the ground, a small silver pendant that glimmered eerily. I bent down to inspect it. It was shaped like one of the symbols on the trees. I slipped the pendant into my pocket. It felt significant. I took a deep breath and started walking, moving cautiously back in the direction I thought I had come from. The path seemed unfamiliar, twisting and turning in strange ways that made it hard to orient myself. Then it hit me. The whispers were gone, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. I glanced over my shoulder frequently, half expecting to see a figure lurking behind the trees. But there was nothing. Suddenly a sharp sound pierced the silence. A twig snapped nearby. I froze, heart racing again. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaky. No reply came, just the rustle of leaves. I took a step back, ready to turn and run. That instinct kicked in hard. But I heard another sound, low and guttural, a growl like before. It was closer this time. The shadows seemed to coalesce, swirling together as I squinted into the darkening woods. Panic tugged at me, urging me to flee. "Why did you come back?" A voice echoed from behind a thick cluster of trees. It was not the girl's voice, but something deeper, more menacing. "You have no idea what you're meddling with." I felt my knees weaken. I turned to run, but the ground beneath me felt unstable. I stumbled and fell, scraping my palms against the dirt. As I climbed back to my feet, an outline emerged from the shadows. A large creature, tall and wide, with eyes that glowed in the dusk. "Leave now," it growled. "You don't belong here." Its voice reverberated through my bones. Fear clutched at my throat, but I couldn't just leave empty-handed. I needed answers. My gaze darted around, searching for an escape or a clue. I pushed myself forward, adrenaline surging through my veins. "Wait, please, I'm just trying to understand. Who are you?" The creature stepped closer, diminishing the distance between us. "Understand? You disrupt the balance. You are not the first, but you may be the last." With those words lingering in the air, a piercing scream erupted from behind me. It was human, raw, and filled with terror. The scream did not belong to me. That's when I saw it. A dark figure running towards me, wild-eyed and desperate. My breath hitched in my throat. I had to decide. Stay and face the creature or run to help whoever was coming. The shadows shifted, and a decision needed to be made. I didn't think. I just ran. The scream echoed in my ears as I bolted towards the figure emerging from the shadows. I had to help. My heart thudded heavily in my chest, drowning out the growls and the dark warnings that loomed behind me. I focused on the running shape, praying it wasn't too late. As I neared, I saw it was a man, his clothes tattered and dirt smeared across his face. His eyes held a wild look, full of panic and fear. "Help me," he yelled, glancing behind him. I could see the raw terror in his expression. Whatever was chasing him was not far behind. "Come on," I shouted, urging him to move faster. The creature loomed right at the edge of the trees, its glowing eyes piercing through the dark. I felt my breath quickening, but I couldn't look back now. The man reached me, his hands shaking. "It's them. They're here." He pointed back towards the dense woods, and that's when I noticed a pair of smaller, shadowy figures weaving in and out of the trees. "Who are they?" I gasped, glancing at the man. "What's going on?" "We have to go," he urged, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward what looked like a more open area. "They won't stop until we're gone." I followed him, adrenaline forcing me to keep pace. We burst into a sharper clearing bathed in a faint silver light. The atmosphere shifted. I felt the seasons change, like time had folded around us. The trees created a claustrophobic wall, but the sky above shimmered. The man came to a halt, staining the ground with heavy breaths. I thought I was alone. I didn't think you'd come back, he murmured, almost to himself. "What do you mean?" I asked, still scanning the tree line for movement. "Who were you running from?" "Monsters. Spirits. Take your pick. They'll do anything to keep this place secret." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You've already attracted their attention." A shiver ran down my spine. This was bigger than I had imagined. My eyes darted back into the trees, the echoes of growls bouncing off the bark. "What do we do?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around. "If we can find the clearing's edge and make it to the river, we might be safe." Before I could respond, I noticed the shadows at the tree line moving toward us. They were quicker, darting in and out like phantoms. I could feel the dread creeping back in, an impending sense of doom. "Run!" I shouted, pulling him toward the path that snaked along the clearing's border. The growls grew louder, filling the air with an ominous threat. They were closing in. As we sprinted, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing tall amongst the trees, watching us. The creature from before. It seemed unfazed by our fear, its eyes glowing fiercely against the night. "Look, up ahead," the man yelled, pointing to an area where the trees thinned out. A faint, shimmering light flickered between the branches, almost beckoning us, but the shadows were gaining. I was torn between the hope of escape and the horror pursuing us. "Go!" I pushed him toward the light, and we ran faster than I thought possible. When we reached the edge, I felt a force pull at my feet, roots and vines ensnaring me, dragging me back toward the darkness. I screamed, desperately trying to break free. The man turned back, eyes wide with fear. He reached for me, his outstretched hand slipping just out of reach. "No, don't look back." "Help!" I cried, panic surging as I fought against the grip of whatever was below. Then, just before the shadows swallowed me whole, I felt something. A pull, a connection to the pendant in my pocket. It flickered to life, and I realized I had to harness whatever this energy was. In a desperate gasp, I shouted, "Stop!" And I saw it. A flash of light erupting from the pendant, illuminating the darkness around me. The shadows recoiled, hesitating in their advance. But that was just the beginning. I had no idea what would happen next. The moment the light burst forth, it felt like the world had paused. The shadows writhed, recoiling from the glow as if it were fire. I felt the grip on my feet loosen just enough for me to break free. "Run!" I yelled, and I didn't look back. I sprinted towards the shimmering light, the man right beside me, his face a mask of disbelief and relief. We plunged into the clearing, bathed in light. I could see that glimmer now. It wasn't just a flicker, it was a shimmering barrier, a thin veil between us and whatever evil lurked behind. I was alive and scared, but a fierce determination rose within me. What was that?" The man gasped beside me, still catching his breath. "I don't know," I replied, panting as the light pulsed around us. "But it worked." The shadows hesitated at the edge of our sanctuary, their glowing eyes peering in. I could feel the energy in the pendant, a warmth that coursed through me. "We need to keep moving," I urged. "This won't hold them back for long." He nodded, regaining composure. "The river is just beyond those rocks," he said, pointing to a jagged outcrop ahead that jutted into the clearing. "If we can make it, we might find a way to cross." We rushed toward the rocks, fear making our legs feel leaden. As we neared the stony growth, I stumbled, a loose pebble slipping beneath my foot. I fell to the ground, losing my grip on the pendant. The light winked out momentarily. A shattering growl erupted from the shadows, echoing like thunder. My heart raced as I scrambled to retrieve the pendant, my fingers finally clutching its surface. Just as the shadows lunged, a wave of light erupted again, illuminating the space around us. "Go!" I shouted with all the power I had left. We dashed beneath the rocky arch, past the shimmering barrier. My mind raced. What was this pendant? What had I unleashed? We emerged on the other side, breathless and disoriented. The sound of rushing water filled the air. I could barely see through the heavy trees lining the riverbank. "There," the man pointed. As we reached the river, I finally allowed myself a moment to look around. The landscape felt different, charged. I glanced back at what we had escaped. The shadows hung there, dark and brooding, flailing at the edges of the light we had invoked. "Can they cross?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "They usually can't. But those were just the scouts. The darkness is smarter than that," he said, his eyes narrowing. "We need to keep moving before they figure it out." The urgency in his voice sent a chill through me. I looked at the torrent of water before us. "What now?" I asked. "There's a bridge downstream. If we can make it there, we can—" Before he could finish, a rustling in the underbrush made both of us freeze. I barely had a moment to process when a shadowy figure emerged, larger than the rest, its eyes glowing an unholy red. "Run!" the man yelled, pulling me toward the river. But it was too late. The creature let out a howl that felt like it ripped through the air, cutting off my breath. I felt dread pooling in my stomach as I realized the shadows weren't done with us yet. That's when I saw it. A massive shape flitting through the trees, moving towards us with a speed that made my pulse quicken. I stood frozen, gripped by fear, while the man pulled me toward the chaos. I had to decide quickly, fight or flee. But something deep inside urged me to face what was coming. I wouldn't let fear dictate my next move. The creature was barreling toward us, a nightmare come to life. The man beside me urged me forward, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. I could make out its jagged teeth glinting in the sparse light that filtered through the trees. "Move!" he shouted, yanking my arm. I stumbled after him, the trees closing in like prisons on either side. We raced along the riverbank, the roar of the water drowning out everything but our breaths and the echo of the creature's growl. We reached the bridge just as we heard the crash of branches behind us. A glance back showed the enormous figure halting before the river, its glowing eyes scanning the landscape, searching for us. "What do we do?" I gasped, panic clawing at my throat. "Cross. We can't let it catch up," he replied, taking my hand and pulling me onto the creaking wooden bridge. I could feel the fear radiating off him, mirroring my own. We stepped carefully, the wood creaking ominously under our weight. It felt like the bridge itself was holding its breath. But as we reached the halfway point, I heard it. A deep, guttural growl reverberating through the air like an earthquake. "Faster!" he urged, and we hurried across the last few planks, sprinting onto solid ground. But then we hesitated, realizing there was nowhere to hide. The forest on the other side was stark and silent, and both of us turned to look back at the beast. It stood at the edge of the river, frustration emanating from it like a storm. It clawed at the ground, its massive form dark against the forest backdrop. My pulse raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was biding its time. "Do you think we're safe?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "For now," he replied, panting heavily, "but we need to find a way to defend ourselves. That thing won't give up easily." Suddenly I noticed something glinting on the ground near the bridge. "Wait!" I called out, rushing over. It was a broken branch, gnarled and sharp. I picked it up, hefting the weight in my hands. "This could work." "Maybe, but we need to keep moving," he said, glancing nervously toward the river. As we turned to scan our surroundings, the eerie silence shattered. From behind a thicket, another set of glowing eyes emerged, another shadow, smaller and quicker than the first. "No!" Panic surged again as I took a step backwards. "How many of them are there?" "I don't know," he replied, shifting the branch into a defensive stance, "but we can't stick around to find out." That's when I heard the whispers. Wispy voices floated through the trees as if the shadows were communicating. I strained my ears, hoping to catch a word. They sounded like echoes of lost souls, carrying a foreboding message. "Listen, do you hear that?" I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. He nodded, but fear was etched on his face as the voices grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. "We need to move," he urged. But before we could flee, The shadows surged forward, a wall of darkness racing toward us. The growls harmonized with the whispers, creating a terrifying symphony that pulled at my insides. I clutched the pendant tightly, feeling its warmth spreading through my palm. "We fight together, okay?" I said, clutching the branch. He nodded, determination hardening his gaze. But I could see the doubt lurking there. This could be it. Some part of me knew this might be my last stand. The shadows erupted from the thicket, the growls melding with the whispers into a crescendo of chaos. What had I unleashed, and could I truly confront it? I was out of time, the shadows closing in. Then, with an unexpected crash, the ground shook. The ground beneath us trembled violently. I stumbled, the branch slipping from my hand, but my grip on the pendant tightened instinctively. The creature's growl rose to a roar as the shadows collided with reality, taking form, swirling around us like a dark mist. My heart raced with panic coursing through my veins. He caught my arm, yanking me back to my feet. "We need to go, now." The urgency in his voice jolted me into action. We dashed toward the edge of the dark forest ahead, where a narrow path appeared, winding deeper into the unknown. "Do you think they can follow us?" I hardly had the breath to ask. "I don't know, just keep moving." As we sprinted, I could feel the weight of unseen eyes on our backs, the whispers blending into disconcerting roars that echoed in my mind. We stumbled into the thicket, branches snapping wildly as we pushed through, desperate to escape the growing darkness. Suddenly the ground lurched again, and I felt something shift underfoot. I glanced down just in time to see the earth begin to split, a crevice yawning open beneath us. Without thinking, I leapt to the side, my legs nearly buckling as I landed on solid ground again. "Over here!" he shouted, pointing to a narrow ledge that jutted out from the forest wall. It was barely visible, concealed by tangled underbrush. I hesitated. "I think it leads to the other side of the ravine." Without waiting for an answer, he reached for the edge, climbing onto the ledge. I followed, heart in my throat. The sound of the chasm opening behind us was terrifying, ringing in my ears. It felt like the ground was trying to swallow us whole. As we climbed along the precarious ledge, I could hear the whispers closing in, nagging at my thoughts. I turned back, glancing for the creatures, but all I saw was shadows flickering in the dim light, waiting. "Keep going." His voice was a sharp reminder, cutting through the fear. We inched our way along the ledge, every step cautious. Then we made it to a rocky outcrop, and relief washed over me. But in silence, the realization struck me hard. There were no signs of life or safety here, just silence thick and ominous. I looked around, trying to catch my breath. The pendant pulsed lightly in my hand, almost as if it were alive. In that moment, I felt its warmth surge, and I instinctively placed it against my chest, seeking comfort. "What's the plan now?" I wheezed, glancing at him. "We need to find the source of those shadows." His eyes flashed with determination, although I could still see the fear lingering just below the surface. "If we find it, maybe we can stop them." I frowned. "And how do we do that? Those whispers. Maybe they're trying to tell us something." He crouched low, looking out into the thicket again. "There's gotta be a way to understand them." That's when I heard it again. The whispers were clearer now, almost coherent. "Follow the light, before it's too late." I froze, allowing the words to wash over me. But the sound didn't feel comforting. It felt laced with urgency. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my stomach twisting. "Yes." He stood up fast, eyes flicking around. "We need to find the light. They're warning us." "Where?" "Further in." He pointed deeper into the dark, tangled trees ahead. Before we could make a decision, the sound of rustling leaves broke the air, followed by a loud crack. My heart plummeted. The shadows were regrouping, their whispers now a cacophony demanding our attention. "Let's go." he shouted, pulling me again toward the trees before whatever was lurking could find us. As we ran, a strange glow began to emanate from the depths of the forest. It beckoned us like a distant star in the night sky, but beneath it, more shadows swarmed, threatening to close in on our last chance. Please let this be right, I thought, dread swirling within me as we raced toward the uncertain light. The glow grew brighter as we pushed through the thicket, an otherworldly shimmer cutting through the oppressive darkness around us. With every frantic step, the whispers escalated into an urgent rush, surrounding us like a chilling wind. They called to us, urging us forward, yet a part of me shivered in fear of what lay ahead. When we burst into the clearing, the sight took my breath away. Before us lay a magnificent ancient tree, taller and broader than anything I'd ever seen. Its bark gleamed with the same symbols I'd encountered on my hike, but now vibrant with a soft luminescence. A golden light radiated from its roots and branches, weaving around the forest like a protective embrace. The air felt charged with energy, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I drew in a deep breath and sensed a flicker of hope. "Is this the source?" I whispered, awe overtaking my fear. He nodded, his eyes wide. "I think so. We've got to get close. The whispers that they're calling us." Calling. As we approached the tree, tendrils of light wrapped around us, soothing the anxiety buzzing in my veins. A comfortable warmth glowed against the cold dread I had felt in the woods. But just as that comfort enveloped me, the shadows on the outskirts of the clearing began to writhe, gathering together like a storm brewing on the horizon. "Stay close," he urged, tightening his grip around my wrist. We stepped closer to the radiant tree, hoping to harness whatever power it possessed against the encroaching darkness. The shadows began to shift, swirling violently, as if agitated by our presence. From within their depths, the large creature materialized again, inching forward with a low rumble, its glowing eyes fixed on us, filled with an ancient rage. "Do you think it's protecting the tree?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper as fear coursed through me. "It must be," he said, glancing at me before turning his focus back to the tree. "If we can connect with whatever magic this holds, we might be able to push it back." I hesitated for only a moment before nodding determinedly. "Together?" "Always," he replied, a flicker of trust igniting between us. We positioned ourselves at the tree's base, the hum of the bark vibrating beneath us. A heartbeat. "Hold the pendant," I exclaimed as I pulled it from my pocket and placed it onto the glowing symbols at the trunk. Light pulsed eagerly at our touch, and the air thickened with energy, swirling around us as we concentrated on the warmth emanating from the tree. But the creature emerged from the darkness once more, growling ferociously, a warning. "You will not take what is ours," it bellowed, its voice drowning out the whispers as the shadows surged forward. "Ethan," my companion shouted beside me, "concentrate." The light within the tree flickered in sync with my heartbeat, pulling at my consciousness as if urging me to connect with it deeper. I closed my eyes, pushing away my fear, and let the warmth wrap around me. A sense of unity settled in, an understanding of balance between nature and the spirits that guarded its secrets. The whispers sharpened into clarity: protect the sacred, restore the harmony. My heart pounded in time with the pulse of the energy flowing from the tree. Without thinking, I shouted, "We're here to protect this place. Leave us be." The shadows paused, momentarily flickering, unfurling as if reconsidering, but then surged forward with snarls and howls that echoed through the clearing. Without thinking, I reached for the pendant, gripping it tight. "Now!" I shouted. As a surge of power clawed its way from the tree, light erupted from the pendant, casting a brilliant glow that engulfed us and the creature. Shadows recoiled violently, howling in a mix of rage and fear, while the force of light pushed them back further and further, until the darkness began to dissolve beneath the power of the tree. But in the midst of this chaos and brilliance, I caught a glimpse, Another figure, pale and translucent, floating amidst the tumult. It was the girl I had seen before. "You must keep the balance," she urged, her voice cutting through the clamoring shadows. "It is your choice now." "Wait, what are you?" I cried, uncertainty flooding me. Her eyes held stories of the ancient forest, of guardianship and unrest. "The forest calls for protectors. Channel its energy and your own truths. You can end this." And with that, she flickered and disappeared into the brilliance. The creature, now caught under the tree's strength, swelled and shrank as the shadows turned restless. The whispers around us grew louder still, encircling our minds as if echoing ancestral wisdom. Protect. Restore. In that moment of clarity I could see it. How the forest intertwined with our lives, how the balance tipped, and what our choices could do. An instinct awakened within me and I screamed, "I understand this place." The light blasted forth, illuminating every inch of the clearing, momentarily silencing the creature as it shielded its eyes. A long, winding path opened up ahead, beckoning us toward the river. "It's trying to escape," he called frantically. But with the shadows receding, clarity settled deeper. I took the pendant in my hand, now glowing steadily, and looked at him, my heart thundering in my chest. "We don't just escape, we have to protect the forest." The creature roared, shaking the very earth. But it couldn't move forward. With newfound strength, I stood firm, arms raised, letting the pendant radiate power throughout the clearing. The space shimmered with energy as I felt a deep connection to the spirit of the tree and the responsibility resting on me. Yet even as the creature seethed in darkness, I realized there might still be a chance. An echo of doubt crept in. What if this had all been a trick? What if the shadows were just the remnants of fear that wouldn't truly go away? "Close your eyes, Ethan," he shouted, tearing through my thoughts. "Channel what you feel." So I did. I trusted. I closed my eyes and allowed the energy to flow through me, pushing back against the tide of shadows. As I focused on balance, I felt the presence of countless souls that had argued for restoration. What felt like an eternity later, the shadows slipped away, and with a final growl, the form of the creature crawled back into the dark woods, defeated. The clearing fell silent, the warmth of the tree enveloping us in a protective embrace. My heart raced as I opened my eyes, staring at the magnificent tree. "We did it!" I gasped joyfully, looking over at him, filled with triumph. But just as I thought it was over, the atmosphere changed again. The brilliant light flickered for a moment, then went dark. "What now?" I asked, edged with uncertainty. "I don't know," he replied, glancing around nervously, "but I think we've only just begun." In the shadows, I sensed a lingering presence, both a relief and a mystery yet to unfold. The forest, it seemed, still held its breath, awaiting our next decision. I moved forward, instinct guiding me, with questions still swirling in my mind. What had I truly unleashed? What lay within the depths of those whispering shadows? I realized, even in our victory, the forest remained alive. A world woven together by stories, both light and dark, and we were now part of it. With the pendant in my hand, a part of me knew I would keep searching for answers. But for the moment, I allowed the energy of this sacred space to wash over me, grounding me before I stepped deeper into the woods, embracing whatever secrets awaited.